Well, thank you for joining me this morning, viewers. This is Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist, Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia. It's sun up and still got a bit of a cough, actually. I hope you enjoy the scenery. The Jehovah's Witnesses organisation has failed its followers for millenniums. For centuries, for over a century, sorry. And part of the reason for this is their false prophecies and their theologically abusive doctrines. Theological abuse is the first step towards psychological malfunction. Because when you're believing lies and you have to convince yourself to believe those lies, and your spirit's telling you something's just not right, but you continually force yourself to push back that still small voice that's warning you and trying to help you, something happens inside you that begins to defile your behavior and your attitude towards trying to understand, towards trying to be honest about things, and denial and all these other destructive traits begin to seep into the personality and the character cognitively dissonantly and cognitively distortingly the minds of the people that are following the lies. Because if you believe a lie, then you've got to expect other people to believe the lie, or what you believe is going to fail. Now the problem with this is you're betraying yourself, and when you betray yourself, you're prepared then to betray anybody. You'll betray anybody to get your message across, to reinforce your beliefs and to justify the time and effort and everything else. We'll just let this train pass that you're putting into the falsehoods. As the falsehoods bury themselves deeper and deeper into your belief system and your core values, as it were, towards this person called Jehovah, and I don't think they really know who Jehovah is. One thing's for sure is the Old Testament God of the Bible did wreak some pretty damaging stuff on people. Once you sell your soul, as it were, to the organization, then a lot of psychological malfunctions take place. They have to, because your mind will be screaming out to you to change this belief, change this belief. And if you don't change the belief, then you're justifying falsehoods. And when you justify falsehoods, that means you're becoming a deceiver. So I'm really sorry to say, but the Jehovah's Witnesses are a group of deceivers that collude together to share the deceit. The Jehovah's Witnesses are a group of deceivers who collude together to strategize how they're going to share their deceit. And they've got no conscience about it. They don't care who they hurt or maim. Their job is to share the deceit and change the course of people's lives. Now, one thing that's concerning about this is, if you look back over the history of the organization, at the false prophecies where people sold all their properties. This has happened several times now. Their followers have sold their properties and all their investments and all their stuff and given it to the Watchtower by way of the fact that the Watchtower's told them that the world's going to end, only to find out and realize when the sun come up and kept coming up that the Watchtower had actually caused them to be destitute financially, mentally, psychologically and emotionally. The sense of betrayal for a lot of these people was so bad that many, they can't count how many, committed suicide. Many come after the organisation, which was impenetrable. They were turned away by the organisation. And many were subject to spending the rest of their lives penniless, without any, for all their hard work, they ended up with nothing. And the Watchtower ended up with their profits and other things. And this has a massive, this had a massive fallout effect on the organisation. And they lost thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. But that didn't matter because cults have got a way of clawing their way back. And the people that have been damaged at that time are just forgotten about. Momentum rebuilds, the propaganda rebuilds. And this is where religious cult activity like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the damage that it does can't be likened to the Nazi regime, because the war that they're waging, the damage that they're doing against the lives of the people that are being involved with them, the damage is in the unseen realm, under the guise of religion. It has a physical and emotional internal effect. The damage is done in the unseen realm of the person. It's not like Hitler going about blowing up countries and causing physical annihilation of, say, the Jews and everybody else he affected. The Jehovah's Witnesses are doing this in the spiritual form. They're destroying lives in the spiritual form. They're ruining the psychological and physical makeup of its followers. And this is something that you don't see on the surface, but the fruit of it does come to light. One of the things that they encourage is not to have blood transfusions, whether it's going to kill you or not. It's better to die than have a blood transfusion. Well, that's not in the Bible. And that encourages death. Who wants death? Not God, not voluntary death like that. The devil. And so he's using the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses, just in that one area to bring about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths, just by people refusing to have a blood transfusion. And they have teams internally trained teams that go to the hospitals at these events and make sure the followers don't have the blood transfusion. Now, in some cases, the courts, the judges of the courts, have intervened and said you will have a blood transfusion, and the Watchtower has legged it and just let the court do what they've got to do, because their beliefs aren't based on true Bible content. They've just made it up. So you think to yourself for a minute, how many deaths has the Watchtower encouraged by that one wrong doctrine? Now, if we switch to this two-witness rule by way of application to child sexual abuse, if a child puts their hand up and says, look, so-and-so, whatever, if there's not another person, they just get kicked to the curb. And that's wrong. That should not be allowed. That's illegal, because they don't report the person that's been complained about to the authorities. They don't report it to the authorities. They just leave it. They leave that child at the mercy of the Watchtower system, which doesn't work. Then there's the shunning, where if you don't suit their beliefs and you start to play up and question how truth applies to their deceptions, or you question the past prophecies that have predicted the world was going to end and didn't, and all the damage and carnage that was done to the millions of people that believe these things, you'll be shunned. And not only that, if your family members aren't on board with you, you're separated from your family members as well. The whole construct of the Watchtower organisation, from its foundational biblical beliefs right through to the fruit of what those beliefs do to people, is completely and utterly proven right across the world to be flawed, and that's why it's called a cult. Now, my personal advice to you, if you're starting to question your involvement in this cult, is to find a way to strengthen yourself quietly. Chemo. Start with physically in and mentally out. And study what your concerns are outside the organisation, and trust that the scholars and true proven Bible teachers' facts are right. Trust that they're right. And as you build in your mind proof that the Watchtower is wrong, and that's not going to be very hard. You'll do that in 5 minutes on the internet. And your belief structures start to collapse relative to the Watchtower. How you going, Captain? Bit of wind later in the week. Bit of northeast later in the week, they saying? Southerly, is it? Beauty. Beauty. You'll be troubled. You'll be confused. You really won't be sure which way you should turn. And you need to allow yourself to understand that you've been deceived, and work out what deception is. Now, the devil's the one that wants to go around deceiving people and wasting their time and their life and all this stuff, and he's doing a good job of it. If you're in the watchtower, you privately need to come to terms with how bad the deception is, how blatant it is. You need to look at the other members around you and just look at how cognitive dissident they are. They don't want to believe the lies. They don't want to believe the truth. They're happy to go along with the lies like the people on the Titanic when it was sinking. It was too late. Be a survivor. You can be a survivor of that cult. Starting from now, if you're listening to this. You don't have to advertise it. Just get the information that you need to enforce-ify what your doubts are. You have every right to examine the things that are causing you doubt. And as you find the truth, you'll be alarmed at how hopeless the beliefs of the Watchtower are. How unreliable they really are. And this is going to really trouble you. You're going to need some kind of support and therapy. You won't get that from your family members if they're in the Watchtower. They're just going to shun you. And they're going to alienate you and make out you're mentally diseased and all this other destructive stuff. But you can find help through the internet. There will be people that will help you without it being intrusive or disrupting your privacy. There's so many support systems on YouTube of organisations that help people that have realised they're in a cult, particularly the Jehovah's Witnesses. And from there, your journey to freedom and healing will begin. It's going to be hard. But once you've seen the light and once you've seen how evil and nasty, have a good day, mate, that organisation is, how deliberately destructive